Welcome. Here we are again. This is the Area 8 Did You Know section. And as I mentioned at the end of our last video, this video in particular, I want us to think for a little bit more about Hudson Taylor. Now, granted, there was a lot of information in the reading this week about Taylor, but I think it's hard to underestimate or overestimate, whichever way you want to look at it, his importance and his significance. He demonstrated extraordinary faith and encouraged generations of subsequent missionaries to do the same. He went into previously unreached areas of China, despite the voices of more seasoned missionaries telling him not to go. He accommodated to Chinese culture in various ways that earned him an audience with the people. And his letters and speaking tours in Europe and North America sparked a tremendous influx of missionaries who joined with his Chinese Inland Mission, one of the great sending agencies of the 1800s. He had his struggles, as your reading will attest, but his impact was both deep and wide. While it is probably unfruitful to try to tell Taylor's entire story again after so much of your reading was focused on him, there are several facts that I would like to bring up, some things that I find intriguing that I think are worth us thinking about a little bit further. First off, I'm amazed by how seriously Taylor took his calling to the mission field. Stories are told that after he began to feel God's call, after his conversion, while he was still a teenager, he took bold steps to prepare himself for the mission field. He cut back on his eating. He began studying Chinese. He began studying basic medicine of the time. He did not allow himself the luxury of sleeping on a bed in order to be prepared for the challenges that he would encounter on the mission field. Second, while some Roman Catholics in the centuries before him had practiced such tactics, Taylor was among the first Protestant missionaries who took seriously the challenge to live among and dress like the Chinese. For many missionaries, it was an unnecessary concession. For Taylor, dressing like the Chinese, shaving his head in Chinese style, growing out the male Chinese ponytail, those were all key components of his strategy, believing that the Chinese would be much more open to the message if they knew and trusted the messenger. A third intriguing factor for me is that Taylor is one of the early examples of what scholars call faith missionaries. Taylor believed that if God was calling him to go, then God would supply the means to get him to his destination. For Taylor, there were no support letters or public appeals for funds. In fact, if you joined his organization, you could not do those things. He prayed and trusted and encouraged his missionaries to do the same. And more times than not, God supplied what Taylor needed in a timely manner. Next, his impact on the next generation of missionaries was truly astounding. Hundreds joined his organization and followed him to the inland of China, going into territories where the gospel had not previously been proclaimed. On several occasions, Taylor prayed for specific numbers of new workers to join him in China, and God answered his prayers. While there were organizational difficulties and some concerns about his leadership, the growth of CIM, China Inland Mission, is undeniable. It had 163 missionaries in 1885, about 30 years after Taylor himself had arrived in China, and it had risen to more than 800 missionaries by 1900, right toward the end of Taylor's life. And in fact, that 800 number that was in the China Inland Mission was 1/3 of the entire Protestant missionary force at that time. Finally, like many missionaries, Taylor was so focused on his work and so passionate about reaching the Chinese that he was often difficult to deal with. Carey had similar issues. Judson had some similar issues. David Livingston from last time certainly had some issues. Now, Taylor had a legendary work ethic, and he expected others to keep up. His zeal sometimes led to an autocratic leadership style that chafed people. He didn't have much tolerance for those who disagreed with him or questioned his methods. But despite the faults, Hudson Taylor and his Chinese Inland Mission remain one of the great stories of the Protestant missionary enterprise. There are lots of things that are written about Taylor, that if you are interested in his story, there are biographical things and autobiographical things that are very good and I think very challenging and inspiring. Would encourage you to take a look at those if you have an interest.